So welcome back, design students. I want to show you that I added an edge here on the back cushion, and that helps control the roundness of this face. And then I was able to move these edges back further so I could round off this corner a little more without actually rounding off the face of the cushion. And I like that a lot better. And if you do that, remember to use edge transform constraint here while you're moving so you don't mess up the curve. Okay, so let's create the piping. Remember that this is just a smooth preview. In fact, using some render engines, it will not render at all. So you just need to keep that in mind. Now, in order to complete this process, we're going to need the cushions to be smoothed permanently. So let's do that. Let's select one of the cushions, go to Object Mode, select one of the cushions and push 1 to turn off Smooth Preview. And then we're going to actually smooth this permanently. So to do that, we need to go to Mesh, Smooth. And when you click that, you'll get this little pop-up window here, and that will allow you to select how many times you want it to smooth. And when you smooth something, you basically double the geometry. So if we smooth it once, we double the geometry, and if we smooth it twice, now we've quadrupled the geometry. And we don't want to go crazy with this, because if we do, we could crash the computer. But we want to give this 2 divisions. And then let's do the same thing with this one. Turn off Smooth Preview and go to Mesh, Smooth. Incidentally, a lot of these tools here can also be found over here. Here's Smooth, and you can also hold down Shift and right-click your mouse button, and you'll find some of them here as well. I don't see Smooth in here. Here's Smooth. And remember, we were going to give it 2 iterations. So now what we need to do is extract one of these edges here and use it to guide where we put the piping, because we're going to extrude a cylinder along an edge, and we need the edge to be separate. So what we're going to do is switch to edge mode, select one of the cushions, switch to edge mode, and then double click one of these edges that's close to the corner of the cushion, like so. And then we're going to make a copy of this edge. And we're going to create what's called a path from this edge. So to do that, we're going to go to the Modify menu. We're going to find Convert, and then we're going to find Polygon Edges to Curve. And when you click that, you'll see now that you have a new curve in your outliner. And if you get the Move tool and have that selected here, you can simply move that away. And this is what we're going to use to create our piping. Now let's go ahead and center the pivot. You can see the pivot point is way down here. So let's go to Modify, Center Pivot, and that puts it in the center of the path. And then we need to right-click on the curve and change to Control Vertex so we can see these little dots around here. Now these are like vertices, just like on a polygon that we can use to edit the curve. But we need to find the beginning of this path. And the beginning of the path will be marked by an open square right here. So that's the beginning of the path. And that's important because we're going to have to extrude our thing from this general area here. So let's create a cylinder that will serve as our piping. Certainly not that big. And then we're going to scale it down with the scale tool. I'm going to scale it in all axes first. And then I'm going to make it very thin by scaling it in just the X and Z axes by clicking right here. And then I want to rotate this thing just about 90 degrees. So I'm just going to rotate it like so. And then we're going to move it into place. Remember, if we hit F on the keyboard, it will help us navigate around this geometry and rotate around it. So what we want to do is line this geometry up with this path so that it's on the center, just like that. And then it still needs to be considerably thinner, so I'm going to get the scale tool, and I'm going to scale it still in just the X and Z axes so that it's very thin. And then let's switch to face mode, because what we're going to do is select all the faces except for one end of it. And see, that's why I did it just like that. And then hit delete. So before we delete the rest of these polygons, what we need to do, I think, is come over here to the channel box and open the settings for the inputs for the polycylinder. You need to click on that. And then we need to give it 0 cap segments. And now that we have done that, let's go ahead and switch to face mode and select all of the polygons except for one end and delete them. And then let's select that face and then hold down Shift and select the path as well. So they're both selected. And then we're going to go up to Mesh, Edit Mesh, Extrude, and we're going to bring up the options. And we need to make sure that we are extruding along this selected curve. And we have no taper, or taper of 1, and no twist. And then let's give it a little thickness and click Apply. And you can see that it goes sort of in the general direction of the path, but doesn't really follow it. So let's give it some divisions. Let's give it as many divisions as we can. And if yours is flipping out like this, take the thickness and just hover your cursor over that and dial it down until it comes together end to end like so. And now we can close this, and then we can get the move tool, and we need to look at this thing, because if you look at mine, you'll see that the polygons are black. That means they're facing in the wrong direction. So we need to fix that before we go any further. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in face mode. Then I'm going to select all of the, just draw a marquee selection around all of the geometry like so. Then I'm going to hold down Shift, right click, and I'm going to find face normals, and I'm going to reverse the normals. And that will make them face in the right direction, and they should be light gray. Then I'm going to switch to object mode, and if I try to move this into place now, it works just fine. But if I move the curve or edit the curve, you can see that it messes with my geometry. So I need to decouple this from this curve. So to do that, I'm going to select the geometry, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Delete All by Type, History. And now the curve is no longer tied to the geometry. But we really don't need that curve anymore. We can just simply select our piping and hold down Shift and move another copy over to the other side and take a look at it. And that looks pretty good. Now we don't need this curve anymore at all, so let's just select it and delete it. So the process is exactly the same for the other cushion, only this time we're going to go around this edge. I think if we go here, that'll be too, well, that might look okay. I don't know, but this is really the corner edge here. So I'm going to double click here, hold down Shift, double click here. Like it doesn't go around in a loop because there's a kind of a corner there. And then we're going to keep holding down Shift. Oops. I'm going to hit undo because I accidentally clicked on something else, until we get that whole edge around there, sort of this corner edge. Now when we do this cushion and extract this curve, I can't copy this to the back because this cylinder, when we extrude it, is going to have this little thing here. So I'm going to have to do one on the back just like I did on the front. I'll have to do two, but it's not that big a deal. So remember what we do. We have the curve. Now we're going to go to Modify, Convert, Poly Edges to Curve, and we'll get a new curve. And we can just move that curve out away from the face, but before we do, our pivot's way down there. So we're going to go Modify, Center Pivot, and move this out away. And then we're going to create a cylinder. Scale it down a lot. Move it. And scale it down considerably more, only in the X and Z direction, which doesn't make it any shorter, but it just makes it thinner. Don't want to turn it inside out like I just did. And then I'm going to rotate it. And continue moving it into place. Now remember, it can't have any cap segments. This has one cap segment, you can see right there. But I'm going to go ahead and use that cap segment to help guide me to line it up. I just hit F on my keyboard, trying to line it up with that center point there. And then I'm going to hit my curve and right click and select Control Vertex so I can figure out where the beginning of that curve is. It is right here. So our cylinder needs to be down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to click on it and move it down here. Maybe I should have done that to begin with. I need to rotate it just a little bit more. And once I've got it centered on the path here, I'm going to click the inputs for the poly cylinder and give it 0 cap segments. That's very important. You have to do that. Then we'll switch to face mode and grab all the faces except for one and delete them. Then I might switch to object mode and center the pivot again. So that I can move this over into place a little bit better. Okay, now to extrude it, remember we switched to face mode, click the face, click the path, and we should just be able to repeat that process. Go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, bring up the options. Everything is about the same. Let's go ahead and click Apply. But remember, we need a lot of divisions to make this work. So we're going to give it 200 divisions and dial down on the thickness until it comes into place. And you can type in numbers here too. And I think that looks pretty good. But I think the diameter of this piping is a little extreme. So I'm going to go ahead and click the select tool and hit Command Z a couple of times so I can scale that down a little bit. If I hit F to focus on it, switch to object mode and scale it down in the X and the Z just a little bit more. Then I'll have to move it back into place. And switch to face mode, select the face, select the path, hit apply, give it lots of divisions, and the thickness, remember, was like something like 0.01. Okay, so I can close this now and get the select tool and switch to face mode and flip the normals. Grab all of the faces, shift, right click, select face normals, reverse normals, and then move it into place. But remember, we need to also delete the history so that we can decouple it from the path. So while it's selected, go to Edit, delete all by type, history, and then we can delete that path. And that looks pretty good, except for right here. Now I think what's happening here is that there's just extra geometry overlapping here. Or maybe we didn't flip those normals. That's what it was. I had not selected some of the faces there, and the normals did get reversed when I reversed them. So what I want you to do is try to do the back piping by yourself. Remember, all you got to do is select that path and then modify, convert, polygon edges to curve, and then make your cylinder and repeat the process. So give that a try, and when we come back in the next video, I will show you how it's done, and I'll see you then.